Here's your host, Alex Garrett.
All right, well, it's September 21st. I'm Alex Garrett, and, it's a pretty incredible anniversary 23 years later. The Mets hosted the Braves for the first baseball game in New York City since the September 11th attacks. And sure enough, Mike Piazza had this moment 23 years ago tonight.
Lopez wants it away. And it's hit deep to left center. Andrew Jones on the run. This one has a chance. Home run! Mike Piazza, and the Mets lead 3-2.
And that was, yes, Howie Rose on the call when he was on the TV side of things on September 21st, 2001 with Fox Sports New York. I've played you what Derek Jeter said about the aftermath of 9/11 and what the role the Yankees played, but this homer by Piazza certainly took the cake as well. And I'm putting this on the news feature because it is a news story. That 23 years ago, Mike Piazza hit an incredible, emotional home run against the Braves. And we may never forget that moment either, as it really uplifted the city in its darkest days following 9/11. Now, in a commitment to news, I do want to say that there's an interesting new poll out with Harris and Trump on this day, September 21st. Let me tell you about it. The New York Post reported that polling shows Virginia could be a swing state in 2024. That's right, a deadlock between both Trump and Harris. Harris had the support of 47% of Old Dominion voters compared to Trump's 46%, according to University of Mary Washington in Virginia. And their state is actually doing early voting, if you could believe that. It's September 21st, and we're talking about early voting. Harris, in this poll, led slightly, 48 to 46, and this also included a 4% third-party candidate voting, polling as well. And UMW political scientist Stephen J. Farnsworth says this new survey suggests Virginia could be getting a much closer look from both presidential campaigns and may deserve to be treated as a swing state once again this year. And of course, they thought Virginia was in the bag, the Post writes. And Biden actually won the state by 10 points in 2020, while Clinton took the state in 2016. Obama also won Virginia in 2012 and 2008. The latest polling confirms other surveys that Virginia has become a nail-biter as the race enters the home stretch. Glenn Youngkin, of course, was the red wave leader back in 2021 when he got elected. And could that lead to a presidential vote for President Trump in this election 3 years later? We'll have to see. But Virginia is in play. Polling in certain areas are saying that they're deadlocked. I think that's a lot of America's feelings right now. They don't know what to do. So I'm going to just say this. Don't go to the polls early if you're not sure. Go to the polls on November 5th, Election Day, so that you can get the full picture. Don't be pushed into this early voting bullcrap, because that's what it is. Be yourself. Vote who you want to vote, but do it after you've found out everything. Don't just rush to the polls because early voting is open. That's not the way elections should be done in this country. They rush you to the polls and probably rush you to vote for Kamala Harris or the Democrat. They don't really rush you to vote Republican ever. So don't rush. Take your time. Really make a educated, and by listening to both views too, but really educated vote instead of this rushing early voting. Get to the polls now nonsense. And let's not forget that illegals are voting too. I mean, this is not a conspiracy. There is literally a story today where in Iowa, Attorney General Brenna Bird announces she will be prosecuting a non-citizen who was arrested and charged with allegedly registering to vote and illegally voting. So, that being said, we have to be aware that we have election integrity everywhere. And I don't think early voting brings us that integrity. I'm just going to say that here on the podcast. You could drop my rating down to 2 stars. I don't care. We need election integrity. And early voting on September 21st for what now polls are saying is a swing state, that's a little much. That is a little much in Virginia. So if you want to, and if you're a Virginian today, and you see, voting early, they get the rock the vote out and get out the vote type of stuff. If you see that, but you're not ready to vote, then don't vote. Don't be pressured to early vote. That's not a good way to cast your vote. It is a civic duty. It is a privilege. It is an honor to have a say in our presidential elections. So don't just rush to it because they say early voting starts today. Say, I'm going to give this some time. I have till November 5th. Let me give this some time. Because clearly it looks like and sounds like the Harris-Trump campaigns have maybe an even chance at Virginia. Which I guess might be a first in a long time if they've been going blue a lot of these years. So if it's a swing state, if it's a deadlock state, then don't rush out to vote. Let them come to your state and talk to you, Virginians. Let them talk to you face to face in Virginia before you go out and rush and make a vote, before the early voting gets underway. And I presume that campaigns might make another stop there before Election Day, wouldn't you say? At least they should, with this polling coming out specifically. So that's the polling update. Virginia is virtually deadlocked. Typically blue, but it went red for Glenn Youngkin. Could it go red for Trump in November? I don't know yet. But please, Virginians, I know the polls are open. Don't go early if you're not ready. And that will go for any state who has early voting. Because early voting might mean the easiest choice. Make the harder choice. Go with your conscience, not the advertisements to early vote today. We have till November 5th. Let's pump the brakes on any polling result, on any voting now. Because early voting is not really election integrity. And maybe you disagree, maybe you agree. AlexGNYC.com. But you know what's even more wilder than early voting? How about this? We have sports betting, horse race betting. But when it comes to elections, let's go gambling.
Let's go gambling!
Did you hear about this? Thursday of this week, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission sought to convince a panel of judges to consider its emergency motion to stay a district's previous ruling against election betting. There's this predictive market, and I've never really dealt with any of this, predictive market agent Kalshi, who is, I kid you not, opening up to allow users to bet on the outcome of future events, including on the upcoming U.S. elections and congressional elections in November. Rob Schwartz, the general counsel of the CFTC, said at the hearing this week, the CFTC and Kalshi have been in a lawsuit since late last year after the agency said that Kalshi could not offer contracts related to congressional control contracts. Then last week, a judge for the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia ruled that the CFTC was actually exceeding its authority when it pushed back against the predictive market Kalshi And I believe this allowed actual bets to go on for the election, according to the New York Times and other places. I mean, I took a screenshot of this. Here's the headline in the New York Post and the New York Times. Should betting on U.S. elections be legal? The question is before the courts. Sarah Kessler says in her article this past week, as pundits were sharing sometimes wildly different takes on Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's debate, traders were putting money on which candidate would win the election. On both Predictit and Polymarket, two prediction markets, the odds were favoring Harris. But then get this. Within hours of the U.S. District Court judge giving Kalshi the green light to offer election contracts, the company had posted what CEO called the first trade on the made on regulated election markets in nearly a century. So, right now, there is a gambling outlet overseas, by the way, that was briefly allowed to take bets from Americans on November's elections. This does not help election integrity either. So we've gone from electioneering to...
Let's go gambling!
That's right, let's go gambling. And I really hope the CFTC gets this together. Because while it's blocked now, Kessler writes, a federal appeals court has since temporarily blocked the bets, but the U.S. District Court's decision has essentially opened the door for legal gambling on politics. That will... I have my feelings about players betting on other sports because it could lead to their own sports. But if you allow betting in elections and allow the presidential election to be bet on, they're not just going to be your average finance bros betting on this. There will be campaign advisors. There will be maybe even poll workers. There will be people who are influencing every step of the way during this election cycle, no matter when, if this ever starts. There'll be people influencing this election cycle every 4 years who might also want to put a bet in. And you don't think, as much as they're biased against Trump now, that down the road, a poll worker who might be, your nice person, but then all of a sudden they're hiding votes because they bet on a certain candidate to win? What is this district judge doing? Even allowing for a second a bet to be made on our election. It opens the floodgates. It opens the floodgates for Kalshi and other markets to say, hey, you know what? Come on, gamble on the election. I always feel like boxers were killed by the mob after they lost. They didn't throw the match, or they lost, or they won. They were killed for that. Or maybe egregiously harmed, but they definitely had stuff done to them if they did not go the gambler's way. And the threats on even poll workers to vote to do things if this comes about. So let's not allow gambling. It's as bad as electioneering. No, let's not allow gambling now. In a time where election integrity is at a fever pitch of doubt. Gambling, opening the door to gambling, would lead to even more, wouldn't it? So let's not go gambling with our elections. Because these people who are running are trying to run the country. We have enough outside influences who, might try and sway certain things, might be hacking into campaigns like Iran's doing. We don't need this either. And we don't need poll workers to be further influenced, or others, campaign officials, to be further influenced, and election officials to be further influenced to swing the election a certain way. So shame on the judge, Cobb, for opening this door for even one day where Kalshi would start opening up election bids. If we don't like electioneering, then we sure as hell shouldn't like gambling and the idea of gambling on this. What do you guys think? Alex G NYC1 is my Instagram and X. Alex at alexgnyc.com. Should we start gambling on our elections? It's bad enough when pro sports players are betting on their own sports now. Let's not let the election cycle be determined by a gambling circuit, because that would really tarnish election integrity. That's my One Leg Up on news today. Talk to you soon on the Alex Garrett Podcast, One Leg Up Network.